Well, from the perspective of like working for a tech company, being the CTO of TubeBuddy, are you concerned at all about AI lowering the barrier to entry for like competitors who can now spin up maybe not your full product offering, but some feature that may just kind of steal little tidbits of your market share? Is that something you guys are talking about?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's maybe one of the biggest competitive threats to any company right now. And I think you said it well, which is like, I don't particularly think that it's going to be easy to spin up all of our product, or every product is just like, oh, we can spin up everything you do. Mm-hmm. But one of the disadvantages these products have is like, it's not maybe hard to figure out what their core value is. And there's a bunch of things around that, but ultimately there might be a few kind of core things. And if those are fairly easy to build, AI is pretty good at kind of ripping stuff off. Mm-hmm. Like, it's much harder to create something new with AI in the sense of like novel value. Yeah. You can create new stuff all the time, but do people actually like it? That's still a really hard problem.
Right.
Like, we've always, venture capital and PE firms have thrown money at companies for years to hire tons of people and build tons of crap, and a lot of it fails. Mm-hmm. So speed is really important, but speed doesn't mean you'll make something people care about. But if you look in the market and you're like, well, there's this tool over here that people already know, we already know they like it because they're paying for it, but we think now we can build it for 1/10 of the price of humans because AI is going to help us. That's interesting because now you're charging maybe, I don't know, 1/5 less. So you keep some of your profits.
Yeah.
And a lot of people might switch. I think we're seeing this with like, and this is a local company, I can call it Grain, has disrupted, what's that company that tracks, it's like a sales platform for like recording your calls, Gong.
Okay.
Gong is like a very popular sales platform, and they do a lot of stuff. But maybe their core value is they track your sales calls, they record them, and then they kind of like digest them from a sales manner, like how the salesperson do, connects it to your whole pipeline, all this stuff, super valuable. And they were charging a premium for that because it's worth it.
Yeah.
But now companies like Grain, which I believe was founded here in Utah, come out and say, okay, we maybe don't do all the things that Gong do or have the whole ecosystem, but we can record the calls and transcribe them through a sales lens and connect up to your HubSpot. Mm-hmm. And I think they're doing pretty well, and they're a cheaper alternative that I think maybe a Microsoft or maybe these bigger companies may not switch over to, but a lot of the smaller SMBs are like, hey, you're saving me, half the cost.
Yeah. Like, I was paying for all these tools that I didn't need.
Right.
So like, yeah, I'll definitely just switch over to you.
Yeah. And the ability to even make a lot of these tools internally now has gone up a lot, like automating reporting, like Tableau, I would be worried. Because some of that stuff is just really annoying to set up, but now it's not so annoying.
Yeah.
And if you're a smaller company, you might take that trade-off. Bigger companies, I think, might be slower to adopt because a lot of processes are already built in, a lot of kind of lock-in. Mm-hmm. But I think on the SMB side, it's going to be maybe a bloodbath for some of these companies. I don't know. We'll see.
And if you like what Tyler just said, drop a like on the video, and back to what Tyler was just saying. Is that something you're seeing at TubeBuddy? Like, have you guys, I don't know if you want to share or can share, but are you guys seeing a loss of market share due to these smaller companies stealing, little bits and pieces, or are you guys being that scrappy yourself and, building out a much stronger product offering?
We definitely strive to be scrappy and competitive in the market. And there definitely are like one-off competitors popping up that do like one of the things we do, and we maybe do 70 things. Mm-hmm. I don't know how much it's affected us yet because a lot of people want more than that. And I think one of the problems too right now still is like, if you do let's say you do 1/100th of what we do, you still have to charge a certain amount to kind of make that viable as a business. And the gap becomes kind of too big to deal with like an existing company's economy of scale. So you have to really make sure you're picking a thing that like has the right unit economics. And I think we have a decent moat there. And we're really trying to be just as scrappy as anybody else could be to keep growing that moat. But where I do think we've lost some, I don't know if it's market share, and I think a lot of companies are seeing this, is people are way more prone to just see what ChatGPT can do itself.
Yeah.
It's like maybe not even that good, but good enough. And if you're already paying for this tool, So I think that's where a lot of, there's this thing in tech where like your biggest competitor is Excel. Like people talk about this, like people will just do anything with Excel. Like, and you'll go to this company and be like, you really shouldn't use Excel for this. Like there are better tools.
Yeah.
I think AI is kind of becoming that thing now where it's like people are finding these super creative ways to use ChatGPT that they're already paying for. And probably it's worth the money in some cases, just pay for a specific tool. But hey, you have it. You can maybe figured it out. So that I think is definitely starting to hurt all kind of consumer products and probably even enterprise as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I talked about this with kind of an earlier guest on the podcast, but when you're, he wasn't in the tech space, but when you're just starting a business, your client list, your CRM is the notes app in your phone.
Yeah.
And then it becomes Excel. And then maybe you get HubSpot after that. But like, the most bare bones basic version of something is still kind of the first barrier you have to get over.
Right. And so a lot of people are probably one of their first purchases for their startup is an AI tool. And they're probably going to push that thing as far as they can before they bring on any other tools.
Well, as far as tools and other things that a university student might be missing right now, you were a professor for how many years? And were you full-time or adjunct?
I was an adjunct at BYU teaching machine learning. I think I taught 3 semesters.
Okay. I would say that's long enough to, meet plenty of students.
Yeah.
How long ago was that?
It was a bit, I think around 5 years ago. Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, AI was still a thing then. I'd say it's still relevant to the conversation today.
Yeah.
So in your experience, what do you think, what do you think students are missing today? That they came into your classroom and it's like, guys, you are not going to make it if you don't get this.
Yeah. I think, I can't say exactly because I haven't taught very, very recently, but if I were coming onto the market, there's a lot of disruption right now in the market with AI tools, with just a lot of things going on in the world. And you can view that 2 ways. One is like, okay, this is a sucky time to graduate. But change is ultimately usually good if you want to see change in your life. And often new grads do. They want a job. They want to move up. And so change kind of makes their opportunities if you can get them. So my guess is there are really good opportunities if you come out of school kind of being a wizard with some of this technology that, like, frankly, there's some more senior people I know that are just not interested. Like they have a bad first experience and that's fair.
Like, oh, I used ChatGPT 3 years ago. It hallucinated. It's never going to take on.
Yeah. Or even like 6 months ago now, it's moving so fast. Like I used Copilot 6 months ago and I could do it just as fast. And that might be true, but now you have this idea in your head and you don't go back and you look at it. And it, like anything, the more competent you are, I think, there's a mental thing there where it's just like, I don't want to give up this thing that I built. And you may also just be faster, right? But as a new grad, you've got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
So if you're coming on the market and you're like, hey, for whatever we're paying new grads now, I'm actually 2 to 3 times more valuable to you because I can do all these things. Like full stack value is real, especially at the junior level. Like if you're good at using AI to help you do a full stack value for a company, like think of the idea, build it, design it. That's exactly what like companies want. And I think that's why you're seeing kind of middle management get thinned out a little bit because it's like the builder has so much leverage now that they maybe didn't have before. But building has changed because before builders were constrained to their own capacity, right?
Yeah.
Now, builders can have like an army of junior people helping them via AI for very low cost. And so I think the best people are going to be those that almost have like a manager and a builder mindset at the same time, where it's like, I want to build and I'm excited about that, but I also have the capacity to organize AI to help me figure it out. And that's kind of a really impressive skill set that I think is accomplishable and can only get better for like junior people.
So what do you think about like, especially junior developers, junior engineers who trying to get their first job right out of college, software engineering, they're a CS grad, we'll say, or computer science for, those not in the world.
Yeah.
If these people are now being passed up because we don't need as many junior developers and now a mid-level person using AI can fill the role of 3 junior developers, like how do you stand out? Just become, do your own projects? Like what is it that's going to make them stand out? I think we're seeing a loss of junior developer jobs, especially because now a mid-level person can do more. And so why do we need these 3 lower, junior people who make mistakes or slow and all these other things?
Yeah. I mean, the business answer is they're cheaper. Mm-hmm. So like if you're half the cost and 80% of the value from a business perspective, that's interesting to a potential employer, perhaps. I think one of the challenges that when anything changes is companies change at different rates, and that can be kind of hard to deal with. So you might see a lot of companies making poor decisions right now on who to hire because they just don't know better. Things are changing. They don't really know how to identify the right people. They don't know within their own company who the right people are to keep. And so that's going to be frustrating, I think, as companies try to adapt. So if we're me, I would try to keep my ear to the ground, really know what valuable is. And then if the company passes on you, they're just not the right company. Like keep looking for companies that better understand what's coming, at least in my opinion, because there will be tons of companies that just don't get it. And they will get it eventually, or they won't be a company anymore, in my opinion. But there are a lot of companies, I think, that are looking at junior developers. It's like, you don't cost as much right now, and you can have more value to me. And maybe a junior or a mid-senior engineer could have more value, but they cost maybe 3 times as much. Or maybe I've got a group of senior people that just aren't buying AI. And I'm bought in as the leader, so I want to find people that really are excited.
Yeah.
And that's like where the new grad, I think, can really set themselves apart. And I think it's not going to be via schooling. Like it's not to say
like traditional schooling.
Yeah. Like, and I still think, I don't know if it's unfortunately, but that's still like a barrier often for a lot of companies. Like you still probably want to have a good degree from as good a college as you can with a good GPA. That only helps you. But what often new grads don't realize is like there's a billion people like that. I mean, it's insane. You'll get resumes and it's like everybody seems like they're coming from like a respectable college with like a decent GPA in computer science.
From this country and others.
Yeah, from this country and others. And there's just so many. And so you're just like, okay, what do I do? As a hiring manager, what do you do? How do you figure it out? Well, you start looking for things that are different and valuable. So side projects are often that. If you have a GitHub open source project that you started that's like really interesting, make a YouTube video that kind of shows how you walk through or build things with AI. Like basically just assume anything that you have that everyone else in your school probably has too is not going to help you.
Yeah.
It's just going to be neutral. So how do you do things that other people aren't doing? Like when I was hiring more data scientists 5 years ago, like everyone was doing sentiment analysis projects at school. Like, can we predict if this is like a good sentiment or bad sentiment in this comment? And like every time I saw that, it just wasn't helpful. It's like everyone's done this, everyone's doing it. But then you'd sometimes see these projects like, whoa, this person went end to end. They built the back end. They built the machine learning model. They got it into a production environment on the cloud and got a few users. That's interesting. They've done a lot of things at a young age that a lot of people just haven't thought about. So I still think that holds. Like the more you can just differentiate yourself in a valuable way, the better, especially when you're young, because you can't really lean on the brand of companies in some ways when you get, like if you worked at an Amazon or a big bank, like, so you got to find ways yourself to differentiate.
Yeah. I think a few years ago you could a little bit more.
Yeah.
Like I remember in an interview coming out of Morgan Stanley, they were like, wow, Morgan Stanley. I'm like, trust me, it wasn't that cool.
Yeah.
Like I know you know the name, but it wasn't that intense.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of the unfortunate secret is a lot of these top companies, top schools, they're not really that different.
Yeah.
But the assumption is you did something special to get in the door. It's not really about what you learned in that environment, whether it's a school or a business. It's that whatever you did, they're using that company or that school as like a pre-filter.
Yeah.
And just kind of assuming that if they thought you were good, that's good enough for them, at least as a starting place.
Yeah. It's like when in like a LinkedIn headline, someone's headline is former Goldman Sachs. I'm like, okay, what does that mean?
But it works. I mean, not for all companies, but enough that, you know, ex-Google, I mean, people do like Harvard and they did like a certificate at Harvard, you know.
I could say that. I've got a certificate from Harvard.
Yeah. But it must work, I assume. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
It is kind of funny though that, just talking about education, and I wasn't meaning to turn, such a big segment of this episode into like talking about grads, but it's a little bit close to home for me because I've got a brother-in-law who is a recent CS grad, and I'm like, well, what can he do? He says it's tough out in the job market. I assume he's doing, all the things he needs to.
Yeah.
And I hear about some of the projects that he works on, not everything, but it is interesting thinking about my own education and like some of the professors in UVU's MBA program who I've gotten to know, like a handful of them have Harvard MBAs.
Yeah.
But then now they teach at UVU. Like I assume, and one of them has even said, like, don't think you're any different than the people at Harvard.
Right.
Like you are just as capable, you are just as smart, and your education is not any better or any worse.
Yeah.
We're teaching the same things. And maybe the network is a little bit better that you get out of Harvard because someone's dad, makes more money than your dad or something. But the education information can be totally the same.
100%.
And it doesn't necessarily set you apart that you went to Harvard or that you worked at Goldman or Morgan Stanley or whatever, or Amazon. But then kind of speaking to a little bit of my finance experience, you actually have some finance experience as well.
Yeah.
Your very first, I don't know if it's the very first job you ever had, but the first one on LinkedIn, you spent some time as an intern looking at fixed income products there. So you started in finance, but then made the switch to now being in the tech space. Like walk me through that decision making.
Yeah, my background or undergrad was in economics. So one of the places people look with economics degree is finance.
Yeah.
When I was coming up on graduating, I was like, people were like, you should really have an internship before you graduate. I was like, oh, that's interesting. So like, I kind of scrambled to like find something.
Yeah.
And so like maybe the new grad thing, I think I must have applied legitimately to 100 companies.
Yeah. That's how it feels like getting your first internship or first job. Like it is. Yeah. If it's not in the hundreds, you're not trying.
Yeah. And I literally got 2 offers. This is for my first full-time job. Like 2 offers out of 100, 2%. Like I think it's always hard for new grads, honestly.
Yeah. We just talk about it this way because AI is here for the first time, but it's always been hard.
Yeah, it's a different hard. Like AI presents different challenges. There was kind of like the housing crisis when I was in school. So it's like, okay, there's like kind of a big recession going on, but there's always like a reason. And I think there will always be reasons. And I'm not saying it's not harder now. It could be. It's hard to quantify, but ultimately you've got to find a way in anything to like find your path. Whether that's working for someone or not. Like you might be like, okay, it's too hard to get a job right now. I'm going to figure out something on my own. And I think AI makes that even more capable. But for me, the thinking was like, I liked economics and I worked in an economic consulting firm for a few years out of my degree called Charles River Associates. Learned a lot, super smart people. And I just really saw the value of programming. Like I was a decent programmer there, even though I didn't study it. And like it really, I think, did set me apart.
Just automated some of your workflow, some of your day-to-day.
Yeah, you automate like making a PowerPoint deck and be like, oh, what kind of wizardry is this?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, okay, that's interesting. And data science was like, I mean, I was working there when this article from, I think Harvard came out and it was like, data science is the sexiest job of the 21st century. Like that was like a big deal. And I was like, well,
sexiest is maybe not the right word.
Yeah, I don't know why they use these words, right? And like, okay, that's interesting. And I was already kind of doing a lot of it, but I didn't have a computer science degree, so tech companies it was harder to get in the door at a tech company. So I decided to change that and I got a computer science master's degree and that really helped. And then interning at Amazon kind of put that kind of filter for me, which is like, okay, I didn't work there full time. I had an offer. And so like I could go to people and be like, look, like I could work at Amazon. So that gave me a lot of leverage at the time to kind of get maybe the job I wanted in a place I wanted to be in and with maybe like a seniority that was faster. And then I could just kind of keep working my way up that way. So that kind of really, I do think accelerated my career. Back to like the unfortunate truth. I don't think like I went to a good computer science school, but I don't think we taught anything that is super secret.
Yeah.
I think the best education is probably online. Like anyone can get the best education in the world, in my opinion now.
The best education is online?
Like if you look at Coursera, or Harvard or MIT as courseware, like the best linear algebra class in the world is probably Gilbert Strang on MIT's open courseware. And they don't care about putting out because they know that doesn't matter. What they're actually selling is a stamp of MIT approval.
Yeah.
And so I took that course. I didn't ever put it on anything because no one really cares, right?
Right.
But people
Made
care
you a
a
little
lot.
sharper, but it's not on the resume.
Yeah, on the resume it doesn't matter. For me in my life, it mattered. And so that's like the game you have to play, I think, at any point in your career is how valuable you are is not actually what matters. It's how people perceive your value. And that's where schooling and working at big companies can make a difference, because all of us in our lives are making these really quick decisions about people, whether we realize it or not.
Yeah.
And whether or not you want to or not, you run into someone that got an MBA from Harvard and then went and worked at Bain or McKinsey. You're immediately thinking some things about this person.
Yeah. Like, oh, he's probably smarter than me. He's probably richer than me.
Right. You might be completely wrong, but that can definitely play in your advantage. And it is a bit of it's a game, right? And the network is really important. Often getting good jobs means knowing the right people.
So would you recommend trying to play that game then? Like in order to set yourself apart, like, well, sometimes you got to get that name on the resume.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm not saying everyone has to do that, but it is a path, and it's a very high expected value path. Like if you can go work at Google or one of these big companies, and it's changing, like maybe now that's OpenAI and Anthropic, but if you work at a hot company in the day, that will help you a lot. Doesn't mean you can't do it other ways. But if you're thinking about like, what's the most expected value? And when I was in grad school, there was actually a lot of people, you know, like we had Google and all the big companies would come out and recruit. And I knew people that just tried to get the minimum grade because I knew they didn't really care that much about the grades.
Right.
And they would just study for like 2 years, the Google interview or the Facebook interview. And so they'd show up to this interview, maybe memorize like every algorithm they could possibly be answered and just crush it.
Yeah.
And get like $200,000 offers. And this was like 8 years ago. So that was like an enormous amount of money. And they played the game, right? Maybe they weren't the smartest people, but they knew that that was the step they had to go through to get where they wanted to go. And again, not everyone has to want that or even care about it. And you might even think it's stupid and hate it. But it is kind of a game that's going on.
Yeah, it is kind of reality. Like, and it's something I didn't really pick up on. I think it was my first or second semester in UVU's MBA program, which has been great, and you know I've loved it. Obviously, not every moment has been great, and not every professor has been my favorite. But
right.
Overall, I'd still definitely recommend it. But my first or second semester, I was trying to network with a former alumni who now works at Goldman Sachs downtown in Salt Lake, and they're the VP of something, I forgot what. And she had set up just like an intro call with some other person who is the hiring manager for a team that I wanted to work on. And I just treated it as like just getting to know them, not realizing that they were treating it as like basically my interview without having to go through an interview process.
Right.
And I was not prepared for that.
Yeah.
And I think as a new grad or, you know, just earlier in your career, you don't recognize these moments of opportunity of like, oh, I thought this was a different thing, and I was not prepared for this golden ticket that, you know, that could have been necessarily, you know, I wasn't studying Goldman Sachs interviews for 2 years.
Right.
Like, you know, these examples you brought up of like studying Google's interviews for 2 years and just like crushing it in what I didn't realize was actually an interview that was handed to me.
Right.
And sometimes you miss those opportunities like I did because I was not ready. Not ready for that. I thought I was just meeting the guy.
Yeah, and I think that's where like actually learning and being valuable and skilled matters, because it's like, I think of it, and I think some other people have said this, I probably am stealing this, but if you think about luck, what people refer to luck, I think is a big part. But you can do things to increase the surface area of your luck, like how much luck you might be exposed to in your life. And things that I think I've seen is like always kind of being ready to raise your hand, even if you're not sure if you're capable. Like people that tend to move forward are just like jumping in. Like, I don't know, but I believe I can figure it out, and I'm going to like make this an opportunity. And so they're always like kind of involved. And that might slow down as you start to really hone in and become like an expert and reach the level you want, and you start saying no a lot more. But when you're early in your career, saying yes will really kind of expand that luck. Getting out there into the world, like putting yourself out on LinkedIn, going to meetups, you know, pre-COVID, I think there's still that stuff happening, but really just being out in the world 99% of the time, maybe it doesn't matter, but maybe 1% you meet the person that gets you the interview, that gets you the job, that changes your life. And then you look back on it and you call it luck. But if you really think about it, maybe you were the person that was going out in their free time to these networking events or putting stuff out on socials to make that happen. And so I really do think there is some amount of things you can control and there's some you can't. Don't worry about the things you can't control. Try to really lock into what matters to you. And I think that's actually pretty important, especially for new grads, because when you're a new grad, it can seem like money is the optimal thing. Like I should just maximize my money. And maybe for some people that's right. But ultimately, I think what you learn over time is like happiness is a very different thing than money. And money's a part of it, I think, for sure.
I mean, there's some minimum that's required, but there's also a minimum that, you set that minimum. I don't have to live in this massive townhouse. I need some space. I now require space to do a podcast, and I have 2 kids and a wife, and they all need a room. And
Yeah, and you also can every dollar I've made, I think has made me a little bit happier, but that goes down over time. So I'm not going to say like making more money isn't a good thing. Like I hear people say that sometimes, like that's not true.
Like you don't always need one more cookie. Like
you don't always need it.
The marginal utility of additional cookies is
exactly.
You got your economics degree. I started in economics, and then it was I got a full-time offer already. I'm like, how can I finish my degree earlier? So I switched from economics to finance because there's so much overlap, And I graduated a semester earlier than I would have staying with economics. So
I think that's exactly
totally
right.
Get that.
And it's okay. Like if your math equation for happiness is like, I want to surf and make money to support surfing. Like you don't have to have the same equation as everybody else. Maybe your equation is I want to be a millionaire. That's okay too. Like there's a whole range of things. And I think it's actually worth being thoughtful as you go through life on like, is this actually getting me where I want to go? Or am I just like picking the easy thing to maximize and I'll actually like not liking my life?
Yeah.
Because I see that happen where it's just like, why are you here? Well, it just seemed like the next step to a place I don't even know why I'm going there, but it seemed to be the right thing.
I think that happens with companies too. Like I've been in I'm now like a mid-level manager. I'm a product manager at a small tech company. And I've been in a handful of meetings where it seems like we did X and now we do Y, but it was never on a roadmap. It was never really in the plan, but it just seems like the next thing you do.
Right.
Kind of like, you went to school, now you got the job, now you get married. Like these are just things that as a society, we think we do next, even though it may not be the right time for you or maybe not the right thing to do ever.
Right.
But what are some examples of like, whether at TubeBuddy or another company where you started in on a path and we just kept going, even though this wasn't really what the company needed to be doing at the time?
Yeah, I mean, I think the bigger the company, the more common that is. Like ancestry, and there's good reasons for this. Like you're a certain size, changing is hard. And it does take time to see if things are going to play out. But like, I think I've seen it a lot where you kind of like try to set this big vision and then you try to execute said vision. Billion different things happen along the way that start changing things. And then at some point you kind of don't even remember the vision. You're just kind of like you're in the trees and you're just walking to the next part of the path.
Yeah.
I see that happen a lot. And I think one of the ways you can avoid that trap a little bit is try to find times to like pull yourself out. That some people call that strategy, and kind of look above and say, okay, like, where are we going? Why are we going there? I think too, it also takes like courage to get out of that rut. Because sometimes maybe you're on the right path and you just got to go a little longer. That's one of the really hard things about leadership, I think, is nobody knows. Like in coding, one of the nice things when I was just pure coding is I know if my code does a thing and I know if it works right. Like I'll get a bug if it doesn't. And if I fix it, it starts working. Very quick kind of like reinforcement to your ego in some ways of like, cool, I am valuable. I fixed the problem. In leadership, you're a little bit like, and Dan Lawyer said this in my podcast with him, he's like tacking into the wind. It's like you kind of feel the wind and you have a sense of what you should do, but it's more like guessing a little bit, making bets, taking on risk in different areas. And it can take a while to figure out if you think you even did the right thing. Like that's one of the things I talked about with Mason's, like, especially in big tech science where it's years, it could be a while till you even know if those things were right. Yeah. And that's hard. So I have a lot of empathy for companies in general, whether you're a leader or not, because everything is hard. Like, people want to believe that it's easy to like build a company, make money, be a creator, and then you start doing it.
Yeah, then you start doing it and you realize you forgot to start recording the audio.
Yeah, or it's like the number of times I've heard like, well, if I can only get like 1,000 people to pay me like $100, wow, that would be an awesome side hustle. And it turns out that's really, really hard.
Yeah. Turns out nobody does that.
Yeah. So when you're kind of criticizing your leaders that founded like a $10 million revenue business, I think there's a little bit of room for empathy. Not that they get everything right or they're necessarily even like good people all the time, but the act of creating something that other people will buy is very hard.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought up Dan because I wanted to talk about something that he said on your podcast. He said that he hates chasing competition. And for those that didn't catch it either, this is Dan Lawyer, not the VP, right?
CPO, Chief Product Officer.
Chief Product Officer. Yeah, not the VP of product. He's the Chief Product Officer at Lucid. And he said he hates chasing the competition, that he'd much rather be like paving the way, setting the standard. He doesn't want to be chasing parity, like, oh, we now have this feature like our competition does.
Right.
But I don't know. I think if you're going to be the number one in the space, I guess you have to do that. But if you're not going to be the number one, then I think we're seeing this with Tesla right now. We're like, they were the first mover in this, blue ocean. They had all these costs that they had to take on to figure out. They made all these mistakes that now their competition doesn't have to.
Yeah.
And as the first mover, it seems like you take on a lot of expenses, you make the mistakes, and your competition gets to avoid those expenses and learn from your mistakes.
Right.
So what's your stance on, whether it's two-buddy strategy or your own personal thoughts? Like, would you rather be the first mover, or would you rather be the second or third mover and get to save your money and learn from your competition's mistakes?
I think that it can be much more deadly to be too early than too late as a company. Like, one I think about is like Vine.
Oh, yeah.
Like, Vine was kind of like TikTok.
Yeah.
But it was just too early.
Mm-hmm.
And
it was exactly like TikTok at first. Like, TikTok now has longer videos, but and a better algorithm maybe. But
the concept,
I think it was exactly the same.
Spot on.
Yeah.
Too early.
Yeah.
And being too early can kill you. Being too late, though, there's a lot of examples, and not every company, like there's a survivor bias, but there's a lot of companies that were second, third, fourth, fifth that end up ultimately taking the market. So I think people worry a little bit too much about being too early, because it is risky. There's big rewards if you do it right. But like your example with Tesla, I think OpenAI might suffer from this a little bit. Like, they spent so much money kind of proving the concept before anybody else. And now like these companies like DeepSeek in China, Anthropic, they're way smaller teams. They can basically build on top of that now
and spend 100th. Way less. OpenAI has, maybe even less than 100th the cost.
So
it's crazy.
I'm not sure if OpenAI actually ends up being the dominant player long term. It depends. Like, if they can crack another thing that's hard, but like moats are hard to come by for any company. And so if you're a first mover and you hit on something really profitable, you better bet a bunch of companies are going to try to take you down.
Yeah.
And so if you have a good moat, where we usually see that as like network effects, like LinkedIn, eBay, that can be really hard for other competitors to take down. And that first mover really can matter. But that's changing, like with more people being online, more people being more social, the switching costs being easier. So I think that if it were me and I had to pick between being too early or too late, it'd be too late every time, because if you're too early, often you just die. Yeah. And then someone takes some of your learnings and then a little bit later figures it out. And it's not even that they figure it out. It's just like the market is now ready for that idea. If you're too late, you can actually learn a lot from what other people have done.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what I thought. And as I was listening to Dan's thoughts on it, like, he's obviously very successful. Lucid is crazy successful. Like, I don't know what they're at today, but over 100 million users now. Yeah. Like, it's just insane, the growth that they've had and the growth that he has helped create at that company. And so obviously he knows something, but I would have loved to have been in the room with him as he said that, just to be like, oh, hey, actually, can you explain that some more? Because sometimes I think it's way better to be late, rather than being the first one. I think Vine was a great example where Vine would crush it today. Yeah. It would, as long as their algorithm was good, like, they would do way better than TikTok or just as good, Right.
And I think that, at least, and I'll speak for Dan maybe. So maybe you wouldn't agree with this.
I mean, maybe I'll get him on and see if he can talk about it. But for now, you can speak for him.
And like my opinion, like being first to market is dangerous. Feature wise, it's a little bit different. Often good features, are going to get copied anyways. And if you can get there first, it's not as costly. And like it's building a new company first. Like it's not as much learning necessarily. Mm-hmm. And you can really reap some early rewards by people coming over, and then they might just be too lazy to switch out. Yeah. Like if you've already got a good product, like you've already are established in the market, following people around can be pretty bad because you're ultimately always late to that boost, and people aren't going to necessarily switch from something that already is working for the same-ish thing. And often people are lazy. So like, even if yours is better, if it's not like 10x better, most people are probably not going to pay attention.
Right.
And that I think makes a lot of sense to me at the feature level, where it's a little bit different at like the whole business level. But there's this thing called the Kano model in product. Maybe you're familiar, which is like,
not yet, but please teach me.
This idea of like table stakes things, and then there's like delighters, and people can go look it up. There's a whole like theory on it. But the table stakes thing is this idea that there are certain things that are table stakes, and that changes over time, and every player in the space has to have them. One thing that's table stakes in tech is like secure authentication. You have to have a way for people to like log into your product. Mm-hmm. And in the hotel industry, it might be warm water in your shower. And so no matter what delighters you have, if you don't hit things that are table stakes, it doesn't matter. Like you could be at like the nicest hotel ever, but if your shower was cold every day, you would hate it.
Right.
So like it's really hard though to know what a table stake thing is and isn't. You might perceive something as table stakes, but it's actually not. And so now you're playing catch up on a thing that didn't actually matter. But if something changes in the market, like chat, LLM based chat became table stakes for any AI company to have. Mm-hmm. And that's what Claude has. That's what Gemini has. That's what DeepSeek has. It's all that because that is now table stakes for those types of products.
Yeah.
And they're all trying to figure out what the next thing is. And ChatGPT came out with GPTs. Okay. This is now table stakes. Anthropic did projects. Gemini has gems. But they're all trying to be the first on the feature level, I think, to define the new base, because now your competitors have to run around and catch up. Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense to me, but you don't want to completely ignore your competitors. I don't think Dan was saying this either, because if you're missing a clear table stakes thing, they'll just erode out because you won't meet their basic expectations.
Yeah. Well, on the feature level, I think that's a great point. And I think that's fair to say for Dan. And hopefully I can get him on and we'll flesh it out a little bit more from his perspective too. But from a feature perspective at TubeBuddy, is there something that you guys thought, oh, this is going to crush, and then it just flopped?
Yeah. I mean, more than I'd like to admit, honestly. And I read a study once from Microsoft. This is a little bit older, but I think they estimated, and I'm going to get the numbers wrong, but it was like a crazy number, like 30% of things are successful that they tried. Like where they get the return or better than they thought they could.
Yeah.
And that stuck with me because I think the reality is most things most companies try don't do what they thought was possible. It's been true of most companies I've been at, but it's kind of like investing, like a VC firm, they know most companies they invest in.
Like 80% are going to just die.
They're just going to die. But it only takes that 20%. And really within that, like that 1 or less percent that really take off for it to work. And so I think that's what you hear about, at least in tech, a lot about velocity, because it's like the number of times you can get at bat really helps. But obviously you can't just be throwing crap out just all the time. That like throwing a bunch of crap around isn't ultimately going to make a diamond. Mm-hmm. You need to still be strategic. So that's like the balance. It's like, okay, how do you be the right amount of strategic and the right amount of velocity to get enough at bats that you think can hit home runs for you?
Yeah.
Knowing that, a 30% or a 300 batting average is amazing. Like that's just the game we're playing.
Right.
But if you're only at bat a couple times a year, and this is why Waterfall died, it could be a decade.
And what was Waterfall?
Waterfall is this idea, and like, yeah, maybe just too old. It's a little before my time, even though it was popular. Project management, where you basically plan out the whole project before you execute. Mm-hmm. So you spend a ton of money up front and time to like pixel perfect plan. then you execute for like 6 months, 12 months, and then you win, hopefully. But what turns out is often you don't. And so then we became agile. Is the word where it's like, okay, we'll just like it's agile. In my opinion, is like waterfall every 2 weeks. You just every 2 weeks have a plan, but because it's only every 2 weeks, you can learn a lot faster, take a lot more bats. I think AI is going to be the next level of like, now it's going to feel silly to be 2 weeks. It's going to be like, we can build things so fast that it's like almost like, how do we not piss our customers off by getting so many different things in front of them? And I think it'll take some time to get there, but the best companies in the world, I think, will start really like strategy. Not that it's not important, but your ability to learn through action is higher than it's ever been because of tools like AI.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, to speak to the waterfall method, without knowing the names for it, this is something that we tried on one of my latest projects before I was on paternity leave at work recently. And it did not go well. You make all these plans, you flesh out all these documents. You're like, all right, this is what we want to do. This is what we're going to have the devs build. And then there's all these dependencies. We're going to line up all these projects at the same time.
Right.
That way we're not having this like same dependency every time we want to launch this new feature. We'll just have this one dependency for this whole big project we're going to release. And then there's additional things that you just don't know until you start doing it. And it became very apparent once we actually started in on the work, like right before we planned on implementing. And it's like, this was not the way to go about this. Like now we spent months just kind of wasting time.
Yep.
Which is a bummer.
It's a bummer, and
we could have gone much faster.
It's still common, unfortunately, and it's hard. Like it's a lot easier to identify a problem than fix a problem, and so sometimes it can be easy to confuse those things. Just like, oh, this is a problem, so why don't we just like fix it? It's a little bit deceptive because then you'll go the other way, and it's like, oh my gosh, we just like, yeah, we moved fast, but it was crap, and so like, what did that get us? So there's like these balances you have to have, but waterfall, it sounds so nice, which is like, we'll just make the plan and then we'll execute the plan. But what we've learned
it's so simple.
Yeah, so simple. But then what you learn through hard practice and research, if you look into the research, is so much changes the first time you do anything. And so best practices tend to be, what's the minimum assumption you need to test? And how do you test that as fast as possible to validate or invalidate your idea, and then keep stacking those? But that's not easy. Like it's not necessarily easy to stack a bunch of dominoes into like the Eiffel Tower. Like what you want is the Eiffel Tower, but you can't just go build it all at once. So what you want to do is like stack these things up. But you might start stacking dominoes and stack nothing. You know what I mean? Like you're shipping a bunch of stuff and learning a bunch, but it might not actually go anywhere. And so neither is right in its extreme. You've got to like have the right amount of strategy and direction with the right amount of like move fast and break things. And that's hard.
Well, as a company that's supporting the entertainment industry specifically, I consider YouTube the entertainment industry. How do you see that industry changing over the next few years with AI?
I mean, the biggest thing that hits entertainment is generated AI content, in my opinion. So there's images, there's text, obviously. There's now videos are getting better with like Vox 3 from Gemini. That's got to be the biggest change that's happening. I do think it's interesting, though, to note that like there's still just a lot of garbage. Like the truth is, and I'm sure you can relate to this as a creator, it's just hard to make things that people want to watch, whether you have AI or not.
Yeah.
Like it's still really hard. You might be able to create 10 times more videos now because you can use AI to help you, or 10 times more Substack posts or whatever it is. But ultimately that might not mean much in the things you care about, like user growth or money. And so I think that we're still trying to figure out how to make the most of these tools. And probably the most powerful people were the best storytellers before. They just got more powerful tools. Like I got into woodworking somewhat recently, and one of the analogies I use is, for a long time, people used hand tools, no like power tools.
Right.
When power tools came out, the best people at using them that adopted those tools were the people that were good with hand tools, because they ultimately understood the craft of building good things.
Yeah.
You couldn't just take a random person and throw a bunch of power tools at them and they were going to build you like a beautiful piece of furniture. Like that sounds stupid. But I think sometimes we think the same thing with AI and then we discount it, which is like,
it's kind of the equivalent.
Yeah. Like, okay, we have this powerful tool, But because we can't just throw it at anybody and get great results, it must not be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
What I think of AI is like, wow, if you're really good at something and you're good at AI, dang, that's a really competitive thing right now. That might change in 5 years as people catch up. But if you're a great storyteller and now you've got AI to help bounce more ideas around or do some thumbnail ideas for you quickly, you're even now a better storyteller, in my opinion. But if you're a bad storyteller, AI is probably making you
you're probably
worse storyteller.
Probably not getting better. Right. You're maybe getting better if you are learning just because of the speed of iteration. You now have more at-bats to get better.
Right.
But a bad storyteller is just more vocal with their bad stories.
Yeah, it doesn't act, and I think we see that for the most part, though there is, and I think this is more of a generational thing in entertainment. Like cringe content seems to have a niche. So there are some like AI only channels that have like millions of subscribers. I can't remember the name of one of the bigger ones, but I've gone and watched some of them. I'm like, this is garbage, straight garbage. And I worry about that. Like I've got young kids.
Oh yeah. I mean, as you said that, I'm like, I just spent a week with extended family and some of the shows that like they would put on, I'm like, is this real? You guys watch this? Like, this is insane.
So I do worry a little bit. I think there's types of garbage content that for whatever reason is almost like junk food to people's minds at a certain generation. And it's bad for them. And a little bit every now and then, sure, cool. But I worry that too much is just getting pushed out by the algorithm because it's junk food. And now that's all they're seeing. So that's all they're kind of engaging with and they're getting more of it. And that I think is a bit of a risk. Is like if somehow people figure out how to make bad content that somehow speaks to our brain, that then the algorithm reinforces because we watch it and pushes out the good storytelling. Like I love tons of content, like even stuff my kids watch, like Ryan Trahan has cool series going on where he kind of travels around and does different things. And I think he does a really good job kind of like telling the story, showing you new things. And like, he's not doing anything crazy. He's not like a Pixar level storyteller or something, but I'm like, this is good content. You can tell he cares. And then I'll see some stuff that my kids watch and it's like someone like painting their nails with like a viral video on top of it.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, this is obviously like garbage.
Yeah. If you ever see a podcast clip from this with like Subway Surfers on half of it, it wasn't from me.
Yeah. And like that worked. And so people pick up on it and now you see them everywhere. And so I think that's, in the same way, like we kind of have like nutritional guidelines and even restrictions by the FDA. I kind of wonder if at some point we might have that for content and entertainment, which is like, for whatever reason, our brain will like these things on some level. For
some reason, we just want the garbage.
Yeah, it's like a drug to our brain.
It's like Marvel movies for the past 10 years. I don't know your stance on Marvel, I'm sorry.
But like the same way we kind of like, we're like, these drugs are bad for you and we're just not going to allow them in society without like a prescription. I kind of wonder if some content is like that. Not at the same, that's pretty hyperbolic, but like at some level, it's like a drug to you and then you can't escape it.
I don't know. I don't think it's that crazy to compare the two. I think it's pretty similar. I think especially in the age of AI where content is just so much more prevalent and we are just in front of screens all day.
Right.
I think it really matters, like the content that you put in front of your face, especially since, I don't know about you, but I am looking at a screen all day. And whether it's like Teams or Slack or whatever, or a YouTube video or a podcast or a movie, I don't know. I kind of wish there were some guidelines or like,
I agree.
Or something there.
And I'm with you. I watch screens all the time. One of the reasons I pick up woodworking is like a hobby I can do that has no screens. And that's really nice. And I love the internet and I love YouTube and there's so much good on it, but there's also things you got to watch out for that can really send you down this path of like doom scrolling is what, like we are not unaware as a society. And some states have like tried to ban it for kids. I don't think that's the right answer.
Like banning YouTube or
like I think under a certain age, you like can't sign up for TikTok in some states. I don't even know how you would really enforce that. But I think the better thing ultimately is probably education. And that's like, I think a responsibility for people that have kids to some degree. And then people that just like, if you're teaching kids or interacting with kids or even adults for that matter, like I think we can do a lot to have junk food every once in a while on content. Sure, totally. Doom scroll once in a while is not a bad thing.
Yeah, watch Captain America 3 or whatever.
But like, if you find yourself in this rut, I think it's worth recognizing that it's possible to reprogram your brain to get out of it. And there's such better things to do, whether it's with the screen or not, with most of your time.
Yeah. This concept I've been thinking about lately is that like everything is compounding.
Yeah.
If you do the same thing over and over again, it will compound, you know, upward or downward. If you're inconsistent about something, then there's no compounding. So not really a use case there.
Yeah.
But if you're consistently consuming this garbage content, I think that's got to have some sort of compounding effect on your mind over years and years. On the flip side, if you're, you know, for 30 years consuming incredible content, learning from, you know, the best people, enjoying really thoughtful comedy, and not just like pandering sort of stuff, like I think that can really turn you into a great person with a sharp mind who accomplishes a lot of things. And I think there's going to be like a clear distinction of people who are like always just like scrolling TikTok for years and years. You know, I think 10 years from now, this will be a lot more apparent of like where they are in their lives and what they've done versus those who chose not to.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's definitely possible. And we'll see what happens. I don't know what what is YouTube going to do? I think ultimately most platforms try not to. I mean, Twitter's the one that kind of went full blown like,
say whatever you want.
Yeah, we're out of this. And most of the other ones I think try to mostly do little, but try to pull out most of the stuff that most people would consider like inappropriate. But it's hard. I get it. Everyone's got a different idea of what's valuable, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I think it's just worth realizing that the algorithms are trained to give you what you're engaging with.
Not necessarily what you want, but what you engage with.
Yeah.
If you look at it and say, this is terrible, and then you comment and you say, this is terrible, I'm like, well, you're going to get more of that, homie. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's going to keep coming. And then you find yourself in this echo chamber, which they find politically, whatever side you are politically doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's quite easy to just find yourself in echo chambers on the internet now because we've built systems to try to make money off of people's, you know, eyeballs, and they reinforce the things that keep your eyeballs there.
Yeah.
And that just kind of by definition becomes an echo chamber for most people. And I'm sure I have some that I'm unaware of myself. I'm not immune to this, but it's worth remembering that like the world is more diverse and nuanced than anything anyone sees makes it seem to be.
Yeah, it's always fun for me. Like when I discover some new niche on the internet, like, or I was at the park maybe a year ago, and I just like took my daughter to the park. My wife was sick, so it was just like the two of us, and it's kind of pushing her on the swing. But then I saw several other adult men, probably in their 30s or 40s, and they had these little RC cars that they had built, and there's like fake rocks at the park by the playground. And they were just like controlling them, and they're doing like mini rock crawling as if they had these, you know, these expensive Jeeps built out in the desert. But it's just like these little mini rock crawlers. I'm like, I'd never even considered that, but that looks so fun.
Right.
And I've just been in this echo chamber of like my hobbies, you know, motorcycling, fishing, photography. Like I haven't even gotten to hear about RC cars on fake rocks. Like that looks like so much fun.
Right.
And I think we need to get out more and see what else the world has to show for us.
Yeah.
Are you concerned at all about AI just forcing us into deeper echo chambers?
I think so for sure. I also think, like the internet, it has the capacity to do either. Like the crazy thing about the internet is if you want to go on Reddit, you can find any echo chamber you want if you take the time. It's not going to get fed to you unless you start engaging with it. Like the algorithm will not do that. But Reddit really did empower a lot of communities to come together in a more visible way. And so I do think AI, like one of the things I love to do with AI is I just have kind of like random questions that before I maybe wouldn't have like gone down the Google search rabbit hole to like connect all the dots. But I'll go to AI and be like, what is this? Or why does this work? Like an example, we were at the hot tub and physics isn't my best subject. Like I did physics in high school and did pretty well, but I never really studied it. And I have a sense of like, okay, you're in the hot tub and there's mist coming off, right? In the cold Utah winter. And I'm like, why does it happen? And I had a sense of like why I thought it was happening, but I had no idea if it was right. So I just go to AI. I'm like, hey, like I'm in this hot tub and there's like condensation essentially coming off of it. Like, why does this happen at a physical level? And it explains it to me and I go look into it and it did a pretty good job. And it's like, that was cool. Like I learned a thing that before would have been pretty hard for me to go like connect the dots on perhaps. Maybe there's just a website that explains it. And I think AI is really cool that way, where I can now like get into woodworking. Like I got into woodworking post AI, so it's pretty recent. And I'm like asking it what tools I should buy. What tools do I actually need? What types of things should I build to like build up my skill set? And that's really fun for me. So I think AI definitely has the capacity to take you either way.
Yeah.
But I'm more excited about it expanding my thinking than its ability to narrow it. And the nice thing right now is there isn't yet a ChatGPT like feed that's like, so it's kind of whatever you want to make it right now. You go and you type in a thing. So I would definitely, if people have interests or hobbies that they like your thing, with the cars, you don't know about, you could go ask a guy, like, I saw this thing, like, what is that about? Like, what does it cost to get into?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I overheard him. It was like 4-figure expenses.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm like, this is a serious hobby.
Yeah. And whether or not you get into it, you just like learn something new.
Yeah.
So I love AI for that. I think it's pretty cool.
So do you have any like habits or resources that you use to like expand your mind rather than just go deeper into these echo chambers that we're already in? Like using AI.
Yeah, I think honestly, the best one I think is just be curious. Like I was talking to someone on my team that's an engineer, and I was kind of asking him like, why? Like he's like pretty good at what he does, and maybe a tier above a lot of other people as an engineer. I'm like, what do you think like makes you good? And he's like, I'm just really curious. And I think there's something like I've thought about that a lot, and I think there's something there where it's just like be curious about things, even things that seem weird to you. Or maybe even like go against some of your natural beliefs.
Oh, yeah.
Like that's even maybe where it's more important. Like talk to AI about it. Like you may not want to go talk to somebody about it because maybe, I don't know, you don't have friends that have that hobby, or maybe you don't want to go way down the rabbit hole and like the internet and Reddit. But you might go to AI and like be like, hey, like I overheard this political thing. Can you kind of tell me both sides of it? Because I really don't understand why anybody would be into that. And it doesn't mean that AI is going to convince you or you even believe it, but at least you start like understanding maybe.
Yeah.
And you should probably verify things if it comes from AI. Like it's not always right, but in the most part, I think it's getting to a place where it'll go do a search on the internet to get kind of updated information. It'll kind of summarize it for you. And you have to be careful because if you lead it in a way, it's very prone to that. Like if you start to give it a sense of what you want to hear, it's more prone to just reinforce you. But I think just be curious as you're going through the world. Like you have a tool now that's even more powerful than Google search to make it quick and easy to get information on things like maybe you want to get into fishing. Maybe you wanted to get into coding and you never coded. Like the ability to get into coding right now is on like a whole nother level.
Yeah.
Like literally anybody could code up an app now.
Yeah.
Maybe you can't make it in a way that's going to scale. Maybe there's still some of those barriers, but if you just wanted to, for fun, build something up, man, it's like pretty exciting. My 12-year-old son built a full stack app with AI.
Like Stripe, on the App Store or like?
This is a web app. So like authentication, a database, Stripe for payments, a landing page. Like that's insane. So the tools are there. You just have to use them.
Does he have any users? Like this is awesome.
No, I keep trying to tell him he's a builder a little bit like me, not a marketer. Yeah. So like he did the thing that is fun and kind of built something.
So like, I don't care to do the go-to-market plan on this. Like
I'm like, dude, you need to like try to sell the thing.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, maybe. And I'm like, okay, whatever.
Yeah. Well, I hope you can push him a little bit more because I don't know. I just look back on so many things in my life. They're like, oh, I'm not going to like that. I'm like, that's not what I already like. Right. And then you try these new things that you didn't even realize existed or thought you wouldn't enjoy. It's like, oh, this is actually a lot of fun. Right. Like now I get to, decipher these other challenges that I hadn't even considered. Right. And maybe he won't like creating a go-to-market plan for his web app. Right. I think it's super cool that he built it. So yeah, definitely. It's incredible. He can do the rest of the work with it too.
Yeah. I told my team, if my 12-year-old can build this feature. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. You are the CTO of Ben Labs and basically the CEO of TubeBuddy, which exists just because YouTube exists. Yeah. Are you tired of talking about AI?
No, actually. I'm a big fan of AI. My background's in AI and machine learning. And so I think it's pretty exciting what they've been able to accomplish with the large language models. Really, honestly, more than I thought they would accomplish in this amount of time. So I'm happy to be wrong about what I thought would happen over the last like 12 months.
And what did you think was going to happen? Because you've been in the AI world before all of us even knew about ChatGPT or anything.
Yeah, I mean, there's a thing in AI called AI winters, and they're not uncommon, where we get excited and then we get kind of this disillusionment with the AI. So like some common examples are Jeopardy. When we had AI play on Jeopardy, I think this was like in the 90s, maybe early 2000s, it wins Jeopardy and people are like, that's the pinnacle. We've invented, sentient things because Jeopardy's really hard. But it turned out we just got really good at solving that one kind of specific problem and learned some things along the way for sure, but like it didn't take off in the way people thought it might. Mm-hmm. So then you get what we refer to as like AI winters. And I kind of thought when ChatGPT first came out that we might get something similar where if you've used it like early, like when it first came out, it was very impressive in the sense that it could generate long series of text that was very coherent, and that was really a huge step forward. So I was like, this is crazy. Mm-hmm. But I was like, it's not good enough that I'm like going to it that frequently. It's more just kind of like a wow, look what we did.
Yeah.
And so I was a little bit like, okay, people are getting really excited. Is this actually going to be what we think it could be? Or is it going to be another AI winter? Mm-hmm. And in some ways, I think I was right with some things, which is like the model progression did slow down quite a bit. Like the models have for sure gotten better, but I think where we've gotten better is the tooling around them. So things like model context protocols, better ways of like giving it context, prompting well, like we've just gotten better at using them. And that is kind of what caught me off guard is like, okay, maybe they're not progressing at this rate anymore, but the way in which we figure out how to use them has continued to progress at a pretty steep rate, and that's really starting to change, I think, how people live and work pretty dramatically, where I wasn't sure, to be honest. Like when they first hit the scene, I was like, this is interesting and definitely impressive, but it wasn't quite there. But man, now I'm like every day almost something new is coming out, and it's more on the tooling. I think it's not necessarily like I don't think GPT-5 is going to be like that much better than 4, but the way we're figuring out how to use them is getting better every day.
Yeah, when I think about like the progression of AI, I think it's kind of there's two parts to it. Like you mentioned, the AI is getting better, and then we're learning how to use it a little bit better. And I'm curious what your thoughts are. Like, do you think AI is going to get to a point where it is improving so fast? The rate of its improvement is advancing faster than our ability to become competent with the latest version.
It's a good question. And it's an idea that's existed in machine learning for a long time, which is the idea of like synthetic training data. Self-driving cars have done this. Video games do this, where you take data generated by a machine, whether it's AI or a computer simulation, and you feed it back into itself to help it learn faster. The idea being you can almost generate infinite data. So one idea, which you mentioned, is what if the AI basically generates more things that then feeds on itself, and then it's kind of this perpetual learning system? We haven't seen that work particularly well. Like you will get gains from that historically in different fields, but they're not huge. Mm-hmm. So my kind of intuition is with the current algorithms and the current way we do things, I'm not sure that AI feeding itself AI is necessarily going to be this like learning loop. And I think one of the big problems that people don't maybe talk enough about is what does content look like in the future? Because so many people, at least myself, go to ChatGPT or Anthropic or whatever it might be to get answers. And those answers come back based on data somewhere else. Mm-hmm. But we still need that source or that reservoir of data. And before the loop was, well, if you're going to make content, you'll get incentivized to do it by making money or fame or something because people end up on your site, your YouTube channel, whatever.
Right.
That's changing. And so how do we make sure that people are still incentivized to create recent, up-to-date information? And if not, is that going to be a company? Like, will there be a place that hires people to basically feed the AI information? Mm-hmm. Where they don't even care about the humans. They care about providing up-to-date information in a way that AI can use it so that the humans then go through the AI. I think it might actually end up being the latter, honestly. But that's an interesting idea of like, does AI kind of pre-process everything we interact with? And in some ways that's already happening. Google has an algorithm, YouTube has an algorithm,
Right.
but this is another level perhaps. So I think it's definitely a fascinating question of like, what's the future of content?
Yeah, it's something I've heard over the past couple of years. I don't remember the source, so if someone wants to comment that, then go ahead and share. But I heard somebody say like AI is just the word we use for technology we don't fully understand yet. And I am not that old. I'm only 28, coming up on 29 soon. So I haven't seen all these technologies that we've had in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s.
Yeah.
Haven't used them all. But I guess the word AI was being used throughout that time just to describe things that we didn't understand yet.
Yeah, I think the term came on the field in the like usage in the 1950s.
Okay.
Originally,
So much older than I thought.
Yeah, it originally was used to describe AI. Kind of usually refers to this idea specifically of like a computer or a machine performing a intelligent action.
Mm-hmm.
And so one thing I kind of tell people, and I think a lot of people don't know this because AI got so big, is AI is actually a very big circle. AI is really anything that a artificial system does that we could perceive as human intelligence. And often those were like chatbots early on. So like Eliza was one of the first chatbots where in like 50s, 60s, they kind of made a very basic like if then, and you could kind of chat with it. Obviously very easy, which is where the Turing test came from, which was one way to know if something is artificially intelligent is if it's indistinguishable from a human. And so like that's kind of the test a lot of people look at is like, okay, if on the other side ChatGPT, Claude, whatever it is talking to you and you can't tell, that's kind of passing the Turing test in some interpretations of it. And so that's really where the word AI got started. Then there's this idea of machine learning, which is a field in AI, so it's a smaller circle, which generally refers to techniques that use data to make decisions. So not all AI has to be data driven. You could imagine writing a really complex like if this then that, and that has no data behind it.
Right.
But machine learning specifically takes historical data and then uses it to make future predictions or inferences. So large language models are machine learning. They take all this past data on text, corpuses, books, the internet, everything, and then they use that to make essentially predictions on what word comes next. And then they just got really good at chaining that thing out in a way that feels very like sentient. But it's also why the logical side can be hard, and sometimes people get surprised at the things it's not good at because it's actually not really doing any thinking. The closest we've come that I've seen is things like sequential thinking, where it will generate an idea and then generate an idea based on that idea, so it starts to chain kind of its thinking. But there's no logic in the system. It's predicting words. It's not actually going in there and saying, okay, 2 + 2 = 4.
Right.
Though some of them now have analytic modes, like I think that's pretty common, and some of them will self-trigger like, okay, I need to go code to solve this problem. So it's interesting to see how we kind of deal with these gaps.
I have asked ChatGPT some questions that could, if I followed up and asked for an answer that's more technical,
Right.
It would then offer a number, but rather than me just continuing to prompt it, it has just, kind of with that trigger that you're mentioning, like I'm asking a certain question that does have a technical aspect to it, and it just gets that trigger and it knows like, oh, I'll just calculate this and I'll show you the calculation for it. And so I've seen examples of that where it is kind of thinking, but I don't know. I'm not the programmers over at OpenAI. Like I'm sure you can also just tell it if someone asks a question where the answer is a number that could be calculated, then just do that calculation.
Yeah,
it recognizing it needs to, but it being told to already.
Most of them now have a set of tools that they have access to, and they have been trained to try to distinguish when they need to use them, though it's still very early. There's a thing called model context protocols, which is essentially you can bring your own tools. So like if you use Gmail, you can bring a Gmail kind of authentication, and so we can now go read your emails and like respond to emails for you, and that's super awesome because that's the thing AI is pretty good at. But it's not that great in my experience of knowing like now's the time to call the tool. It will get it right sometimes, where it's much easier is if you just say, hey, use programming to do this, or hey, use my Google, connection to do this. I think it'll get better, but that's definitely one of the gaps I've noticed is sometimes I'm like, you should really have used this tool that I know you have access to, and you didn't, and now I got to go tell you to do that so that I get you back on the right track.
What are the use cases that we can look at for that? Because the first thing that came to my mind is like a scheduling thing. Someone says, hey, are you free on this date? Very easy. Check the calendar. It's open. AI responds for you and says, yes, I'm free.
Yeah, totally. I almost think it's infinite. That's the area I'm kind of most excited for is like models will still keep getting better incrementally. And then I think we'll have to figure out a new way to make them better. Mm-hmm. But how do we connect them to more things? So like at work, for me, we use a project management system and we use like a wiki, right? Like we use Notion. And so I have my AI system hooked up through an MCP to Notion and ClickUp, which is what we use. And I can go kind of ask it to summarize documents for me, write documents for me, give me some of its thinking based on like real strategy that we've already like canonized in our wiki. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty powerful because for me, it's like, okay, I've now got an infinitely patient system that will give me some different ways of thinking about the world. And it's not always right, it's not always perfect, but for me, I use it every day. I use it, it's maybe the number one tool I use in my job now, which is kind of wild to think about, because it just can help me move faster and with higher quality than I could on my own. And I think a lot of people maybe could resonate with that because you're just busy. You have a lot going on, and often you put things out that maybe aren't the quality you want to. And so having AI kind of help you can actually make it better. Mm-hmm. Not because you weren't capable if you had infinite time to be better than the AI, but the reality is in today's world, you often don't have a lot of time.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Tyler, this has been awesome. If people want to reach out to you, learn more about building things, learn more about your podcast, how can they find you?
I'm on a few places. I've got a website that's just kind of the landing page for everything, which is tlyerfolkman.ai. It takes you to like my Substack, which is also my name, tlyerfolkman.substack.com, and LinkedIn is also my name. So I just kind of like stuck with that branding.
Yeah.
But I mostly am talking about right now AI. I think for me, it's really just energizing because it's got so much potential. Mm-hmm. And I'm really not like a tech maximalist usually where I'm like, wow, tech can do everything. And it's like when AI first came out, I was like pessimistic, as I mentioned. But it's probably shifted how I work more than any other technology in my working career. Like I started working after the internet. So like I've always had that in my thing. Mobile phones were pretty much a thing when I came into the job market. But AI is like really it's having me rethink what's possible with teams.
Yeah.
And I think 5 to 10 years from now, we're going to look back and just work very differently. Mm-hmm. I think that always happens, but I think this is definitely going to be one of those inflection points that people are like, oh yeah, when the internet came out, we say that. Oh yeah, the internet. I think we'll be like, oh yeah, when like LLMs, remember before LLMs when we were like doing agile, weren't we a bunch of idiots? Like, people look back on things like waterfall, like what a bunch of idiots. Well, there's a reason they did it. They had different constraints and different things. And so that's where I'm talking about. So if you're interested in that and leadership, I've got a YouTube channel, Leadership Decoded, very small. So a little bit different, but I like
growing, right?
I hope
we'll grow it after this.
I do try to find some really cool leaders in Utah. And I think they've been very kind with their time. Mm-hmm. So don't come for me, but if you want to hear from some of the best like leaders and thinkers in Utah, I think it's a cool podcast to check out.
Yeah. I think that's awesome. Just meeting with the best of the best. And surprisingly, you said it on your episode with Dan, which I also just 100% vibe with. Messaging random people on LinkedIn totally works.
Yeah.
Every CEO is on LinkedIn and you can send them a message and sometimes they respond. A lot of the times they respond.
Yeah, it's like increasing that luck service we talked about. You may only get one back, but maybe that's all it takes.
Yeah.
And most people don't get, in my opinion, like there's so much stuff going around, no one's going to get offended. And a lot of people are just super nice. Like most people want to be highlighted. So if you reach out to somebody and be like, hey, I want to talk to you for my podcast, even if you don't really care about growing your podcast, Like people like to talk about cool things.
Yeah.
So anyways, it's a nice little hack.
Well, I'll share all your contact info in the description of the video.
Thanks.
But thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a great conversation. People can definitely hit me up if they have any AI questions.
Awesome. Thank you.